So it has my logo.
Okay.
I should have brought you one.
I know. I was going to say, where's mine?
No, I'll leave you. Well, this is very used. I'll bring you one next time.
Sabrosura pa' ti que.
Hola manis, welcome to Café con Pam, where we share our stories over cafecito. Yo soy Pam, and we bring you inspiring stories from first-generation Latinx and people of the global majority. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, ring that bell so you never miss our cafecito time. And hey, for more incredible stories, tune into our podcast, Café con Pam. Today's episode is brought to you by No Mono, the traveling sound capsule que nos acompaña durante nuestro tour. This conversation is with Talia. Danny is a dedicated professional with more than 20 years of mortgage industry experience who's committed to servant leadership. He's passionate about people, professional development, constantly raising the bar, and improving the employee and the client experience. He's all in when it comes to rolling up his sleeves and getting it done, but also learning from each situation to continue to get better. Doing the right thing for his clients and employees is a non-negotiable for Danny. Danny co-founded Simpler Home Loans with his business partner and longtime friend and colleague. His day is spent coaching, mentoring, and training his sales and operations team. He also allocates time to ensure that the firm continues to make advancements in technology and credit risk to always be positioned for sustainability and success. Y bueno, this conversation with Danny, we covered so much. I was very curious about his approach when he told me during a one-on-one conversation. And so after we had a one-on-one conversation and he explained how he works, I said, we have to talk about this and bring you to the show. Sin más, here's my conversation with Danny Talia. Hi, Danny. How are you?
Hi. Good. How are you? Cheers.
Thank you for... I'm drinking tea. What are you drinking?
Same thing.
Yeah? Matcha?
Not matcha. But
Okay.
Tea.
What kind of tea?
Just chai.
Just chai?
Yeah.
Okay. So the question that I always ask is, what is your heritage?
Yeah.
You're like, I was ready.
I was ready. I wanted to make sure. I'm like, what am I getting myself into exactly?
Okay.
So I am Chaldean.
Okay.
And so a lot of people don't know what that is. Mm-hmm. So Chaldean is all the Catholics from Iraq.
Okay.
So we actually speak our own language, which is called Aramaic, which is actually
in the Bible.
Yeah, I was going to say it's in the Bible.
Do you speak Arabic?
I get by.
Okay.
I wouldn't say like fluently. My parents, so I was actually born there.
Okay.
And my parents taught me Arabic because going to school,
You spoke Arabic.
you spoke Arabic, and so they wanted me to, be ahead or whatever. And so they would talk Aramaic when they didn't want me to understand.
No.
Yeah. So that was their way of talking. But then
That's
you start
fascinating.
you start to pick it up.
Of course.
So there's so San Diego is actually the second biggest population of Chaldeans.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So Detroit,
makes
Michigan
sense.
is the biggest.
Detroit. Why?
So I think with any immigrants, any community, they go somewhere.
They find a hub.
And then they bring all their family. Well, I think what happened was a bunch of people came there, and then they're like, this is not the weather that we're used to.
Right.
So let's go all the way down to the other side of the country. So we came here. My grandma did the whole petition thing, and we came here because that's who we had that was going to help us get on our feet.
Grandma.
So, yeah.
Look at the matriarch.
Yeah.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, from the Chaldeans that I know,
Yeah.
I think their culture is very matriarchal. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I do agree with that. It's...
Masked with some patriarchy.
Yes.
But very
yes.
matriarchal.
No,
at
for
the
sure.
core.
100%. I agree with
Very
that.
similar to Mexican.
Yes. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
I mean, even down to... it's funny because I would have friends over and we're loud.
Yep.
We're just talking, but they think we're fighting, and it's no, we're
That's how we
having a
talk.
good time. This
Yeah.
is just how we talk.
Yeah.
But I feel like the Hispanic culture is very similar.
Super similar.
Yeah.
For sure.
Very passionate.
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Food is like a core.
The core.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
And you love hard and you fight hard. That's for
And
sure.
you stick for your people.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go back to Chaldeans because I feel like a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm familiar, and when you told me, I was like, "You're Chaldean," and you were like, "Yes," and your
nailed it.
face were like, "How did you know?"
Exactly.
Because I knew Chaldean friends,
Yeah.
but it wasn't something that I knew.
Yeah.
So for the people that don't know,
Yeah.
what is the difference? Like, why don't you say I'm Iranian?
Yeah. So it's actually so I was actually born in Iraq, right? So I'm technically, if you say, I'm Iraqi,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But being Iraqi doesn't tell you like your heritage per se, right?
Yes.
And so that's why I say
A lot of people don't know this
yeah,
because we're used to just talking about the country.
right? No, like my daughter, she's American, right, by the birth of the country that she's
Yes.
was born in, but she's Chaldean by heritage.
By heritage, yeah.
And so, and we're the minority there. The population, most of the population in Iraq is Muslim, and there's two, sects that are, predominantly there. And so most of the Chaldeans were actually in the northern Iraq, and it's funny because they're literally villages. And so if you talk to an older person today, the question they would ask you is, what village are you from? Like if you translate it in English,
Wow.
That's the question. So like when I meet like an older person, their first question is like, what's your last name? What village are you from?
Wow.
Yeah.
Have you gone back?
I have not.
Yeah.
I have not.
Would it be difficult?
No, like our church actually does a bunch of trips there. I don't want to say it's dangerous, but it's unsafe, like if that makes sense.
So is that why Chaldeans leave?
Yeah, it's actually really sad what happened with the Second Gulf War and kind of taking out the government. Because one thing about, not to get political, but like Saddam, like I'm not saying everything he did was good or bad or whatever, but he did have control over the country. So there was he did some bad things, but like people within the country didn't really do bad things, and there wasn't this power vacuum. And so after the Second Gulf War, there was like a power vacuum, and actually all these like terrorist organizations came and they destroyed all our churches up there. There's so much historical, like the Babylonian times and all that, if you really want to get into it.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, some of that history got destroyed.
I mean, we're seeing that now
Yeah, true.
happening.
Yeah, very true.
It's a lot.
It's tough.
How do you feel?
It's sad. It's sad. I like history, History's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. But it's good to understand history and where we came from and how we've evolved. If you just completely erase it, then I don't know, I feel like you're more likely to repeat it. Does that make sense? So I feel like if it's there, it's
there's
a
no
reminder.
evidence of damage.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
not.
Right.
What's the opposite of damage? Like
Right.
lifting.
Yeah. So it's just like, to me, it makes us who we are, and that's how we get better, learning from our history.
Totally.
And so if it's destroyed, I don't think it's good for anybody.
And it's so ancient.
Yeah.
Like that part of the world is
crazy.
like so ancient.
It's really crazy.
It is sad. I know.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really interesting when my parents are still alive. So when they see videos or hear something, they cry. Like
Totally.
they literally will get emotional about their country.
Oof.
And I think it's because they were kind of like forced to leave.
Yeah.
Not it wasn't a choice per
Right.
se.
It's a
Yeah,
persecution.
persecuted.
Yeah.
And it was just like dangerous to be there and raising your kids.
Because of your faith.
Yeah, and just like everything that was going on in the world, like the U.S. was invading, and there was this power vacuum that was going to happen, and all this stuff is just not safe for anybody, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Not just the Chaldeans, but any citizen of Iraq, whether you're Catholic or Muslim or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's sad. It's sad.
So there's a Chaldean population still in Iraq?
Yes, but it's small, and it's mainly up north back to the villages. So a lot of them had gone down to Baghdad. Like my dad was a professor at the university in Baghdad. Had to leave that.
Because it was not safe.
Had to leave that. This is what's crazy. I know we're getting kind of, but I don't know if you
That's
want to hear
fine.
this or not. Okay.
Of course.
So
I mean, these are things that we don't know until we
Sure.
know.
So my personal story. So my dad's a professor in Iraq, very like respected over there. Like education is very big, and so when you are a professor, it's like a really highly respected position. Gets a call from his in-laws who are here, saying, "Hey, the U.S. is the Saddam's going to invade Kuwait. The U.S. is not going to let them." Okay, so there's no internet. There's nowhere to verify this information.
Oh my gosh.
They control the media, so you don't hear it. You don't really know what's going on. But obviously here we do.
Right.
So they're telling, so that he made a decision to uproot his family based on a
phone
few
call.
conversations with his in-laws. And we couldn't come here. We couldn't get a visa to come here. So the only place that took us was Spain. So we actually moved to Spain.
How long did it take from the phone call to like we did like he
6
got
months.
home? Wow.
6 months, completely like up. And then you can't say you're leaving for good. You got to say, I'm going
I'm
to
going on
visit.
vacation.
Because they're like,
course.
think you're going to become like a spy or something.
Yeah. Oh.
It's pretty, like thinking about putting myself in my dad's shoes. Kids, I was 5 years old, so 5 and under, 5, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old.
You're the oldest.
Yeah.
Oof.
So to leave all that and then to go to a country that you don't speak the language and don't know anybody, it's just the only place that took you or allowed you to go.
Oh my gosh.
Pretty crazy.
Your parents are together?
Yeah.
Have you talked to them about it?
Yeah. It's still mind-boggling. I just don't I couldn't do it. Like I'd be like, I want to confirm what you're saying.
Let me get some sources.
like this is a big decision.
Oh
But,
my gosh.
Yeah. So it's pretty.
Do you remember Spain?
I do.
¿Hablas español?
Poquito.
Okay. But you're in San Diego.
Yeah.
So it's
So
like,
it's like, yeah.
you get
So
by.
like when we go
do you
to,
get confused by like a brown, like you are brown, but like a Spanish speaking person?
no. Like what do you mean?
Like do people like when you go to
Oh,
places?
do I get confused
Yeah,
for
yeah,
one?
yeah.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
They start speaking to me in Spanish.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of, I feel like I respond to them in English.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel like they feel like, oh, well, he just doesn't even want to speak and
Right,
what
right.
he is. And I'm like, no, I'm really not.
Right. That happens to my sister because she looks Middle Eastern.
Oh, okay.
And so every time, like any time we
Yeah.
go to places like at the mall, you know, when there's like the booths
Yeah.
of like people, I
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what they sell, but
Okay.
they're all like they either talk to her in
trying to talk
Arabic
to
or
you.
Farsi or like whatever, and she's like, no,
I'm not.
Español,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
They're like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah. So many more questions about that, but so grew up in San Diego,
Yeah.
and then where are we now?
Where do I live now?
Where are we? Tell us about
Oh, where are we? So we are at our office. So I started this company with my business partner called Simpler Home Loans. I've been in the mortgage business for 20 years.
this. Okay.
And we started it mainly because, and we could get into this, but there's a huge lack of transparency between the banks and the mortgages that they offer and to their clients as far as rates go, as far as how everything works. And actually, there's even as big of a lack of transparency between the loan officers that work at the mortgage company and the mortgage company itself in regards to like how much revenue they make and all this other stuff. And so we started this company because we believe there's that huge lack of transparency. And if we're transparent with our employees and we're transparent with our clients, then the client is going to feel more at ease and feel like, okay, this is the right place
understand.
for me to do business and I'm making the right decision for my family. It's a big decision.
Totally.
And especially where rates are at and where prices are at and how expensive everything is, you want to feel like you're making the right decision. So we approach it from an educational standpoint
Okay.
and then this transparent standpoint. And so those two things come together and we feel like it
So,
works out.
how long have you been doing this?
20 years.
This.
Oh, and
like
at
your
this
business.
company, in December of 2022.
Oh,
it's
so
been
you're
a
a
year and a
pandemic
half.
business.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, just after. Yeah. Yeah. So what happened was, to give you an idea, we were working for this other company,
You took it together. What's your business partner's name?
Joe.
Joe.
Joe Sessi. Yeah. So me and Joe were working at this other company, and during the pandemic, rates had dropped. So we were
Everybody
busier
was-
than ever.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
it was nuts. I couldn't find time to like spend with my daughter. Like it was crazy.
Wow.
And then when the shift happened, the rates started going up. A
Yeah.
lot of mortgage companies till today are going out of business. So revenue for most mortgage companies is down 50, 60, 80%. So most companies can't sustain that.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's what happened with our previous company.
Which is wild to the economy if you think about it, because it was this like,
Yeah.
and then it was like,
Yeah.
okay. So you and Joe,
Yep.
you work at the same place.
Yep.
Been in the mortgage industry.
Yeah, we've been actually working together for a little over 10 years. And
Fun.
he was always like my right-hand guy.
Okay.
And then when that happened, and the other company, like Christmas time, the owner said, I'm shutting down. We're like, oh, Merry Christmas. I looked at Joe and I said, you know what, man, it's time. Let's start our own thing. And so we started the corporation, started applying for licenses, and now we're licensed in 19 states and helping clients all over the country.
Did you know what to do?
So, it's really interesting. I was really in the beginning kind of bitter about how it all happened at my previous company. And I was like, why did I go there? I like spent 2 years building it up. We got licensed in all these states, whatever. But looking back at it now, it was God just teaching me how to do it.
That was your
through
training?
that. Yeah. Because I'm sure I made mistakes, and some maybe were costly, and now I'm not making those mistakes for my own. So
Wow.
So hindsight's 2020, but
I love that.
yeah.
So so you have a job, and then they're
Yes.
like,
They're
you
like,
no
"We're
longer have a
shutting down."
job.
Yep.
It's the middle of the pandemic.
Yep.
And you are like, Joe, let's go.
Yeah, and at the height, like rates were really high, and everyone's like, "You're nuts! Like,
Yeah.
this is the worst time to do it." But I learned from somebody that's been kind of a mentor. I follow a lot. He's a contrarian, so he's like, "Hey, when everyone's running away, that's the time to run towards it." You
That's
know?
a good investment strategy, actually.
Yeah, for sure.
So Joe is like, all right, or did you have to convince him?
No, he trusted like in us, and he's like, "Yeah, let's do it."
So where did the idea come from, having this transparency?
Yeah.
Like because I'm thinking
Yeah.
mid-pandemic, like, the
Yeah.
rates are high, like
Yeah.
everything is kind of like against you type
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
then you want to like not just start a business, but also like, let's do it different.
Yeah. So I think we've always had our core values that we believed in, and those were part of our core values. And I think whatever you do and start, if it's going to be this long-term thing, you gotta always think, any decision you're making, does it fit within my core values? And I think like drive for excellence, doing the right thing, transparency, all those things were part of our core values. So
Yeah.
I think no matter what we would have started, it would have probably ended up still having those core values. So I think that's what, leans us in and helps us move forward. So
So you started the corporation, and then how do you get your first client?
yeah, so it's kind of crazy, because first you start your corporation, then you have to go to all these regulators in the country and say, hey, I want to help clients get a mortgage. It's not easy. Like,
Right.
you have to like show them, what you're doing and all this stuff. So, go through that took a good 90 days before the first regulator gave us our first license, I think about 90 days in.
Wow.
So it was rough, because like for 3 months, I couldn't, even if I had a client come to me and say, hey, Danny, I want to buy a house. I'm like,
To be like,
hey, sorry,
gotta wait a
like,
second.
I gotta refer you to somebody,
Oh my
yeah, so
gosh.
it was tough. But fortunately, when you do loans or any business, I guess, for that long, you have contacts, people refer you business, and honestly, we've been fortunate. People are very supportive. Like, the fact that we started this business in this tough time, people have been extra, like, wanting to refer. More than I feel like if I would have said, hey, I'm working at this big bank now, can you refer me some business?
Yes.
So I feel like it's part of, like, the community is awesome.
Totally.
The local community and just the communities that we're a part of, and have been super supportive. So I'm very thankful.
I love that. And so you had to wait 90 days for your, like, from start to...
like from December to like March, we couldn't do a loan.
And
we're
so-
like living off savings and scraping by, and
Oh my gosh.
credit cards are going up.
Yeah. So March comes, and then you
Yeah.
can start operating.
Yeah.
How do you get your first client? Who's your first client? Do you remember?
Yes, I do. So it was a local client. It was an agent that I had called and said, "Hey, I think by this date we should have our license." And she's like, "Okay, I think I have a client. Let me talk to them and see if they're willing to wait." And then it was like a couple weeks, so they waited, and then that was our first client.
Okay.
And, I told them, I'm like, "You're our first client. I'm gonna give you the most awesome deal ever."
Nice.
So really took care of them, and then it just started like spiraling from there. And don't get me wrong, like it's still a tough time in the industry. I feel for everybody working through it.
Yeah.
And I think if you're grinding right now, you're gonna reap the rewards once it turns around. But I'm very humbled and feel very blessed and fortunate that like within those 9 months, one of our partners, and I'll kind of get into this. So what we do is we work with like a dozen of the biggest banks, and we find the best deal for clients.
Okay.
And so we negotiate pricing for the client.
So let's say I'm your client.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, Danny, I want to buy a house.
Yeah.
And do
So
I
then
come to you or do I go to a real estate agent?
You come to me. We figure out the financing.
Okay.
And make sure that you're all settled.
And that
with
means
your financing.
credit score.
Credit score.
Do I have a down payment?
Income, your down payment, stuff like that. We work through all the programs.
Okay.
And then I can shop essentially that loan scenario with a bunch of our investors and see who's willing to give you
based
the
on my
best deal.
profile.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. So
that's pretty standard.
it is. Well, half and
I
half.
want you to tell me the transparency piece.
Yeah, so half and half. Because if you walk into a major big bank, it's whatever they're offering and that's it.
Right. Like I own a property in the Midwest.
Okay.
And I call banks, like right now I'm in the process of refinancing it because I want to whatever. It's an investment property.
Yeah.
So I literally pick up the phone and call banks and I'm
Right.
like, I'm checking rates.
Yes, exactly.
And they literally say, oh, it's like 7 to
Yeah.
10 or
Right.
it's 9.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, this is wild.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You know?
And then they can't
That's
even
it.
give you an actual,
Nothing.
like, unless they'll tell you have to fully apply, then we'll tell you.
Right.
So what we do is we have these banks tell us what they're willing to do for this particular profile. So this FICO score, this situation, this, what are you willing to do for us? We take all that information, we put it in our system that we have, and then when a client goes to our website and plugs in their profile, the system will look at all the banks that are willing to offer and then show them the best one. So if you go to our website right now, you type in this FICO score, this purchase price, this down payment, I'm buying it as a primary, here's the zip code. Our system will go find what all the banks are offering and then show you the best one.
Nice.
And so it's really awesome because we're eliminating the client having to
Pick up the phone
and call. And B, like, are they really giving you the right
They're
information?
not. Because it's never that.
Yes. So literally right now, if you were to price out your loan on our site and then you're like, okay, Danny, this is the one I want. And
So I can work with you for my Midwest property?
what state?
Missouri.
We're not in Missouri yet.
Yet.
Sorry.
Call me when you are.
Yes. So if you fill in your info and you're like, okay, that's what I want to lock in right now, and we pull your credit and your credit is what you said and all that, that's exactly what you will get.
Nice.
Not a dollar different.
That is much easier.
Yeah. It's transparent.
I get it. I get it.
Most
You
banks
know how much time I spend calling banks, getting rates?
Most banks won't do that for a couple reasons. One, they're not confident in their pricing because they're scared. Like if they tell you the real price, they're like,
Then
well,
you
we don't
might
know.
go elsewhere.
But if you apply with me and I get all your stuff and then I show it to you, then you're like, do I really want to start over and do all this again? Okay, fine, I'll just go with you. So it's this like,
Yeah, because the bank only has the access to the bank.
Yeah, whatever the bank's willing to offer, that's it. So we basically make all the big investors, we call them in our business, compete against each other.
Yeah, smart.
And then we're like, hey, we got the client that you want.
Right.
So what are you going to offer them?
Why do people go to banks first?
The big misconception is they already have all my stuff. Like my direct deposit goes in there. They have all my income stuff, and it's unfortunately, it's not reality. All they have that I don't have is 2 months bank statements that they have access to. So like just because your direct deposit goes in there doesn't mean they know your income. They're still gonna ask you for pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, all that stuff.
Right.
So it's just, they're comfortable because they're like, oh, it's my bank. They already know all my, they know where I bought fast food last night.
Right,
Like they should, you know, so, but it's a misconception. They need all the same information.
Are people buying homes right now?
They are.
Still.
So, if you think about it, so A, it's the American dream.
Yeah.
B, it's actually, in my opinion, I'm biased, I guess I'm in this industry, but it's the number one way to create generational wealth.
Yes. And I don't know if everyone believes it so.
Yeah.
Because it's, so I think maybe our parents think so. I don't know if our generation thinks so because it's such a far like reality based on salaries that don't match, especially in California.
True.
Don't match cost of living.
True.
Like you need a 2-house income to make things happen,
For sure.
if at all.
For sure.
And so there's like so many discrepancies. And then thinking, like back in, and that's why I buy houses in the Midwest because it's like,
Yeah.
when I tell you, you're gonna be like, ugh.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, you're licensed in 19.
Yeah.
I bought a house for $64,000.
Yeah.
3-bedroom
Yeah.
with a whole corner house.
Yeah.
Like that's not even a down payment here.
100%. I agree with you. And it is, unfortunately, California, San Diego, Northern California. I don't know if you know this, about 6 months ago, San Diego was named the most unaffordable
Yes.
city in the country. Now, unaffordable doesn't mean the highest price. It's what you just alluded to, which is price compared to income.
Yes.
Because that's what makes something affordable or unaffordable.
Yep.
So yes, doing loans in all these states magnifies how out of whack it is in the area we live in.
Yeah. What do you think about the housing market in California specifically?
We need more inventory. We need builders to build. That's what will create the home prices are the simplest form, if you remember back in college or high school, whatever, supply and demand.
Yep.
The simplest form. Nobody's like out there setting a price on every home, right? It's what is a buyer willing to pay a seller?
Yep.
Simplest form of supply and demand. So right now, demand is super high. There's no supply. Can we talk about the no supply thing?
Let's talk about the no supply because I just moved to this neighborhood actually.
Yeah.
I'm 1 minute away.
Right.
I looked at the map.
You're my
and I'm like,
neighbor.
this is so
You better
fun.
stop by more often.
Anytime. But I used to live in Bankers Hill.
Yeah.
Do you know where Bankers Hill
Yes.
is? It's by the Balboa
Yep.
Park.
Beautiful area.
Really cool. I used to live in a 100-year-old building.
Yeah.
I loved it. It was like quaint and had charm, and you know,
So
I'm
cool.
all about like old buildings.
Yeah.
So many buildings around me got knocked over, and like skyscrapers were built with like the gyms and the whatever.
Sure.
I don't like. Is that more inventory? But people are not buying. Those are developers renting.
No, that's not more inventory. What I'm talking about is like a builder going out, buying a piece of land, maybe a little more east or whatever, and building.
Yep.
Like that's what I'm talking about. They kind of did that in like Otay area in Chula Vista.
Yes.
They expanded East Lake, right?
East
They
Lake.
expanded out there. So I'm talking about stuff like that.
Yes.
Because that's the only thing that's going to solve the supply. The issue with supply is this. If you bought or refinanced your home, which 90% of people did, in 2020 and 2021, you have a 3, maybe 2% interest rate.
Yeah.
And let's say it was your starter home.
Wild.
Okay, so look, let's say it's your starter home and your rate is 2.5%, 3%. And now you have a family and you got 3 kids and it's like, I'm outgrowing this place. Okay, let's think about, you're talking to your partner or spouse, whatever. Let's think about, buying a bigger home. Well, then you start looking and you're like, okay, so if I sell mine, I could sell it for high.
Yeah.
So I'm cool there.
But
Even
your
though I'm
rate-
buying high, at least I'm selling high. But my rate goes from 3
Yep.
to 6 or 6.5 or
Yeah.
7. I'm more than doubling the interest.
Yeah.
Not to mention my taxes. I'm paying taxes now, property taxes, on the higher purchase price versus the price I had kind of bought it at. So it's not realistic. Nobody's going to add an extra bedroom but pay double the payment. So all those people are like, you know what? Nah, I'll build an ADU. I'll knock down this wall so all those people that normally would have sold to upgrade to let the next generation of first-time home buyers
They're sticking to it.
Yeah. And guess what? Those first-time home buyers, they ain't got a place to buy.
Right.
So it's nuts. Every property that is listed, there's probably 5 to 10 offers. Every single one.
Totally.
Every single one.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And also the real estate investor, the cash offers.
There's a lot of cash offers. You know, there's these big companies that I've read about that are literally buying them up and renting them.
Totally.
And there should be, I think with this lack of inventory, there should be some laws against it. Like, hey, I don't think a big entity can just come in and buy 100 homes in this neighborhood and just rent it out. Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
And then, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge.
So how's that affecting your...
So I feel sorry for my buyers because they're having to put multiple offers. We give them an edge. There's ways to get an edge. Whenever there's anything challenging, you gotta like overcome it. You gotta think about what can I control, what can I not control? How do I give my clients an edge? That's what we're always thinking. So one thing we do to give our clients an edge is we make their offer as good as cash. Okay. Are you wondering how I do that?
Tell me.
So normally what the normal process is, we talk, I give you what's called a pre-approval letter that says me as a loan officer looked at your info and you're good.
Right.
Okay. Well, at the end of the day, the underwriter says that you're good or not me.
Right.
Okay. So no, you go out, you find a home, you get in a contract, we then submit your file to an underwriter, they review it, and then they come back with things. And they're like, they come back with things. Or let's say I'm a loan officer that's newer.
Yeah.
I missed something.
Yeah.
And they're like, no way, Pam can't qualify for this. Not really. But,
Yeah.
And then you go back to the seller and you're like, hey, sorry, like I couldn't get my loan. My loan officer missed that I just started getting commission income and I was supposed to have commission income for X amount of time and the underwriter won't use it.
Yeah.
And now I'm not qualified.
Yeah.
So, so the seller's like, are you kidding me? I just wasted 21 days. I thought you were buying my place. Sorry. And you get your money back and you walk away.
Yeah.
And they're stuck like now relisting it.
Yeah.
And you know what ends up happening when you relist? People think there's something wrong with the house.
Totally. And then
they never think like, oh, the buyer couldn't qualify. It's, oh, what's wrong with it?
Eek.
So no seller wants to go through that. So what we do.
That's why they take cash offers.
That's why they take cash offers. It's guaranteed, they're ready to go, I'm done. Okay, so how do we make your offer as good as cash? We take your file before you even find a house and send it to underwriting and get it fully underwritten up front.
So there's cash already.
Exactly.
I follow.
A lot of banks won't do that for a few reasons. One, those underwriters get paid a lot of money. So if I'm giving them a bunch of work on deals that aren't real yet, then I'm fronting. That's an investment. Like I look at it like we're investing in our clients.
Yeah.
But other banks are like, that's an expense that I can't afford. So there's two ways of looking at it. I look at it like if we do that, our clients are going to stay loyal, and they'll stay with us.
Yeah.
So that's one way to kind of give them an edge.
And it works.
It works.
Tell me what you were going to tell me.
Oh, I was just going to add, and then on top of that, it's all about communication and relationships.
Yep.
So if my buyer has done all this, we submit an offer. The buyer's agent who I'm working with tells me, hey, Danny, I just submitted an offer to XYZ Realtor for this home. We pick up the phone and talk to that agent. Most lenders don't do that. So I call them and I'm like, hey, I'm Danny with Simpler Home Loans. Want to give you a little bit of my background. Also want to make sure you're aware this is as good as cash and here's why. If you have any questions or the seller has any questions about this buyer or their financing, call me, text me. I'm here.
Nice.
So those are kind of some of the steps we take.
Above and beyond step.
Yeah, but it's like, to me, this is the bare minimum in this crazy market because there's 10 offers on every house. How are you going to make yours stand out without offering the highest amount, like over and all that?
I was talking to a client and it took her 2 years to buy a house.
Yeah.
2 years.
That's tough.
What?
That's tough.
When I was 21 when I bought the first house, and I looked probably, and this is like way back when, but it probably looked like 3 months.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and then I was like, oh, this is the house.
Yeah.
I went, met with the sellers.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, obviously, you know, and then like signed some papers and I had a house.
Yeah.
Like it was like so quick.
Yeah.
And now people are like 2 years.
Yeah, that's a little crazy. I tell most of my buyers it's an emotional transaction. It could be emotional.
Totally. Well, especially because they ask you for like the kitchen sink.
Yes. No.
That's also really
it's
like
definitely a tough transaction. But I tell my buyers that we work with, hey, don't fall in love. Like, I want you to love the house. You want it. Don't fall in love with it because the odds are you might not get it.
Yeah.
So we set the expectations like, hey, it might take 5 offers before you get one accepted.
Yeah.
So the right house will come by. And I believe everything happens for a reason. That's just my belief. And so if it doesn't work out, there's a reason that we don't know, but you'll know maybe 10 years later. You know.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it might be a better house.
Yeah, exactly.
Dang. Tell us where we can find you.
So we have a few ways. The best way is if you go to www.simplerhomeloans with an S at the end.com. That's where you could search that like full transparent, you know, pricing.
Nice.
We have all our social media handles there too. You could check out some cool social media posts. And we're in La Mesa, on the edge of El Cajon and La Mesa. We meet most of our clients via Zoom. Like, I love Zoom calls. And I love them because we get to share our screen with our clients, go through visually all that information. And you're at the comfort of your own home, you know, in your comfort space, you know, with your significant other, whatever. And you're able to, like, go through all the different examples and visually see them. And so that's why I have this whole, like, setup. All my friends are like, are you doing podcasts? I'm like, no, I do Zoom calls and I want to make sure they can hear me clearly. So
it makes a difference.
Sound is like one of the most important things.
Yes,
So
yes.
in the beginning, I would struggle. I'd like try to speak into the laptop and I'm like, I can't do this.
It's not. So I'm glad you got all the things. Well
so we got a
done.
cool-
It makes a
cool
difference.
setup.
Also builds trust.
Absolutely.
When people can hear you, because when people can't hear you, it's like
all relationships. And when they could see me, like our cameras on, like it's like we're meeting in person, but I feel like they're more comfortable. It's not this like, oh my gosh, I gotta go like with all my bank stuff. And it's like, no,
it's intimidating.
let's just, it is. So it's like, let's talk. And to me, buying a house, you know what makes it real? Because you see this number like 900,000, $1 million. Like what does that really mean?
Yeah.
So what makes it real is when you know how much money do you need at closing and what is your monthly payment going to be.
Yep.
Once you know those two things, now it's like, okay, yeah, I have this much in the bank. This payment is going to be tough, but I'm going to cut out a couple of things here and there and it'll be worth it. And then it's real.
Totally.
So those are some of the things we try to get to in those consultations.
Amazing. So what are 3 things people need to do to get ready to buy a house?
It's a good question. So I think it's important for you to know where your credit is at. I think a lot of people don't pay attention to it, and it could be very costly. It could limit how much you qualify for. It could limit how much it could increase the cost of that loan. So, you know, there are different sites that you can view your credit. So I think
Do you use FICO or Vantage?
So it's FICO.
Okay.
And actually, most people can't access. There's different scoring models. We're getting technical here, but most people can't access the mortgage scoring model. It's a tougher model. So if you see your scores like 790 on one of those other sites, it'll probably be a little lower maybe on the mortgage one.
Yep.
But
because it's mortgage, car, and like credit card.
That's exactly right. They each have different scoring models. Exactly.
I didn't think I qualified for a car, and then I went just to see, and they were like, "Oh."
Here you go.
And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
It's different.
Yeah, so I think one, just kind of understanding where you're at score-wise. The second thing is talking to a mortgage professional. Most people start their real estate journey, home buying journey, on Redfin, Realtor.com, Zillow. So they're looking at the thing
Dream
before they know where they're at. And that's okay. Like, it's okay to pique your interest with that. But I think the immediate next step should be contacting a mortgage professional so they can walk you through what is that payment going to look like? How much cash do you need to
call
close?
you.
Yeah. You know, I think I still can't believe how many people still tell me, I need 20% to buy a home, right? 20% down. It's like, no, you need 3%.
Yeah.
I can get you in a home
That's
with 3%
a big
down.
misconception.
Another big misconception, mortgage insurance.
Yes.
So a lot of people say, if you ask my mom about mortgage insurance, she'd be like, don't ever pay it. It's the worst thing ever. Save up 20%. So it used to be very expensive. It's not as expensive anymore. I had clients that did that in 2019. Said, I'm going to save up. You know what, Danny? I don't want to pay the mortgage insurance. I'm going to save up 20%. Guess what? They're paying way more right now for that home, price-wise and interest rate-wise. And they could have just paid a couple $100 in mortgage insurance.
Dang.
So I look at it, it's all about perspective. I look at it as a vehicle. Like mortgage insurance allows you to buy a home with less than 20% down. And honestly, most of my clients that come in and they see the difference in payment, they're like, I'll just do 10%.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so figure out your score.
FICO, talk to a mortgage professional, and then partner with, and then figure out the real estate size. Yeah. So it's your team, right? I think you said it perfectly. It's a team effort. And whether your mortgage professional can refer you to somebody or you have somebody that, like, let's say a family, friend, or whatnot, they just got to work as a team. It literally takes those steps that I explained, you know, to contacting the listing agent, doing all those things to stand out, to make it work. And so I don't know the situation, but your friend that it took 2 years, sounds like maybe they didn't have the best team.
Probably.
You know? So, but it is the market. Part of it is the market. It's a tough market.
It's wild.
Yeah, it really is.
Well, Danny, thank you so much.
Thank
this was
you.
really fun.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Anything else you'd like to add?
No, maybe, you know, next time we could get into the ancient Babylonian times.
Yeah, let's talk history for sure.
Awesome.
Okay, well, cheers. Thank
you
for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
And that was it. Gracias for stopping by. Don't forget to, and remember to share this story with all of your friends, family, primos, primas, cousins, tías, tíos, aunts, and uncles so they can learn about these stories. Make sure to visit cafeconpam.com. Stay shining. Yo soy Pam Covarrubias y nos vemos durante nuestro próximo coffee.
Sabrosura pa' ti que